Hey, we're your hosts.
I'm Charlotte.
And I'm Jonathan.
And we believe that one of the most valuable gifts you can give to yourself is the gift of wholeness through integrating all aspects of what it means to be human.
And in this podcast, we're bringing you insight, information, and inspiration to move from a stressful to stress-free life.
Your journey to becoming even healthier and happier starts right now.
Welcome to Wellness Theory, the podcast.
Welcome to today's show, everyone. We have a wonderful guest here with us today. Thank you for tuning in and for joining us. So we've invited CJ along for a conversation on all things biohacking. So CJ has leapt into the world of biohacking and nutrition for about 10 years and is the host of the Switch with CJ podcast, which is empowering listeners to make a shift towards a healthier and happier life. So he's on a mission to help make health and wellness less complex and more fun, which I absolutely love. So welcome to the show, CJ.
Thank you so much. Thank you for inviting me. It's a pleasure to be here.
It's really cool to be here. So CJ, we're going to talk about everything biohacking, but for our listeners that have maybe not heard that term before, or perhaps heard it and maybe isn't completely sure what it is, tell us in your words, what is biohacking and why is it so important for you and what you do?
So if I had to just write it down, this is what I like. This is an elevator pitch when someone asks me, what is biohacking? I always tell people it's the art science of being superhuman. Now, when we want to expand it a little bit more, then we look at, think about in an old school time, think about computers, right? Computers run a code, and sometimes there are some people who are saying, oh, I can this computer perform better. So what I'm going to do is try to hack into it. So those are that hacker mentality people. So what they do, they figure a few things, looking at the laws of coding, and they're able to better or even outperform any of the computers just by into it. So with biohacking, we're trying to do the same thing. With biohacking, what we're trying to do is to hack into the human body, looking at the rules of nature, rules of human physiology, nutrition, biochemistry, molecular biology, sleep science, science that has been there before the science textbooks were there, so ancestral science. So we look at all of these different aspects. Then we add in tech, machine learning, lots of other things. And then we say, okay, perfect. Here's you or me, when we came to this world, we weren't given if you buy a new iPhone or you buy some device, you're actually given a user's manual, correct? But that we did not have a user's manual, so we have to navigate our way through life. So biohacking is just accelerating that navigation using user's manual from other places and then just applying it to yourself because, we're a part of the same cycle and most of human life and other life on the same principles. We just have to stick to some of those things. So that's how we hack into human biology. And that's in a longer way and question. That's what biohacking is.
I love that. It's something that I think it sends some people into a sense of wonder, but also into a sense of perhaps fear around what this could mean because we're seeing technology rise so quickly. I think for the average person that's not so geeky about health and wellness, like I'm assuming you are the same as us, we live and breathe this stuff. For the average person, it can feel a bit weird to try and almost like hack things, and it sounds like it could be like just the latest trend. It's another quick fix. It's another gimmick. And one thing that we always tell our clients that we work with is that actually it's more about getting the most out of who we are, right? It is about helping us to fulfill our potential physically, mentally, and emotionally, right? And socially, even, I think. And when we can get that extra 1%, that extra 10% that perhaps somebody else isn't, that's where you get your edge as well. And that's where you can really start to thrive in ways that we didn't know we could before. So I would love for you to tell us, why is biohacking so important for you? What role has this played in your life? Because, you are living and breathing it. You've got a whole podcast dedicated to it. This is essentially your life. So why is that the case?
You mentioned a very important point that we're all trying to do something to enhance our potential that we can use to thrive, our potential that we can bring good in this world, good to our relationships, people in our etc. So when you look at it, time, there are two fundamentals here. Most of us are battling two different things. One is, or a mix of both. One is time and one is energy. Time is running the same way for you, for me, and for anyone who's in build, right? And when you look at time, it's always ticking. So if you're working, it's ticking. If you're not working, it's ticking. If you're happy, it's ticking. If you're miserable, it's ticking. If you're joyful, it's ticking as well. So time is always, but then we come to the energy part. If you're able to do something with your energy levels, with biohack, with your sleep modification could be a biohack. Not choosing to eat that cupcake could be a biohack. The willpower and things around that. And what you essentially do is to increase your energy levels. So when time is, we've got the fixed time, if you're able to enhance your energy levels in every cell of the body, then what someone experience or do in 10 years, you might be able to do it in a year. So then we bring in concept of anti-aging and peak performance and all of these things as well. So if you're here for about 100 years, you might be able to do things which might be there for 1,000 years. So this is a great value proposition for everyone. So anyone who's listening and anyone who wants to kind of live extra life, whether you want to be there for your kids, you want to spend extra time with them, or you want to make sure that you are great at work. I always tell people that, you mentioned everyone's trying to get ahead of things, and we think life is very big race, but that's not like how I like to think about it, because about life as a rat race, and this is how it's referred to, but the winner of the rat race will always be a rat. So you don't really extend your potential too much. And we always talk about going to the finish line and racing our way through. That's how our culture is built. But we all know that the finish line in life is only one thing, right? Is death. So you don't want to be pushing everything to the metal, even with the biohacking. A lot of people will use hacking and kind of unleash their true potential, and most of them will use the potential to work and then get burned out, and then it gets a vicious cycle. If you can take a step back, and if you can understand that, oh hey, here's some techniques, tools. It doesn't have to be technology related. So with the fear of things, there have been ancient cultures that have been like the OG biohackers. They have imported some of this knowledge in caves, some of them in leaves, and it's got translated to books. So what we're trying to do is to use that information and then use better living via science. So this is not something that people have to be afraid of. We're using similar things that have been used for a long time because people were just able to observe it. Cultures have been able to observe things for thousands of years and then learn things from it. And then that's what gets passed on. So you'll see in most of the cultures, I was lucky enough to travel the world 10 years, and I got to learn with a lot of tribes and a lot of cultures and visited a lot of beautiful places. And their approach is very simple. Stress less, sleep more, wake up at sunrise, go to bed at sunset, don't eat too much, have positive and loving relationships, and don't be racing. So when we look at the modern life, we're not doing anything, or most of us are not doing anything when it comes to those. So could it be that we could implement some of these hacks or some of these techniques to actually, get back to that state, get back to the state of not having to rip your hair because you're super stressed, because you're not able to manage your internal situation, and be more calmer. Meditation is a biohack. It's one of the oldest biohacks out there. So I don't want people to have this fear mentality. Yeah, then we can talk about red lights and all of these things. But these things could be a fad. I don't know. They've been there for thousands of years. If something has to happen, only to get better. So what some of the technologies or techniques you might hear about right now, they're not going to be there in the future because we're going to even master this. and it's going to be more advanced. So yeah, I think it's just better living through science, using some of these ancient principles, looking at nature, sometimes looking at even geometry principles and trying to recreate it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's so interesting what you said there. At the end of the day, it's using these tools that have been around for a long time to enhance our present day, isn't it? And I think when we can leverage these biohacks, whether they're natural, whether they're technology based, that is clearly linked to nature as well within the science that supports it, we can make our day-to-day life easier because we can continue to live in the modern day, like busyness, if you like, because we can't deny it. Life is very busy and there's a lot of distraction, and biohacks can actually help us to mitigate some of the more undesirable consequences of that. So I'm going to pin you down here a little bit, CJ, because I'm still really curious to know, why is it so important for you? I think our listeners have got a great understanding now.
For me, yeah. So why is it important for me is because I'm very passionate about health optimization and also longevity. So these are things that drive me. I also think these are the things that fuel me up in terms of purpose. So I'm naturally drawn to these things. I'm naturally drawn to figure out, and I'm also a curious soul. So I'm naturally drawn to figure out what's the next best thing in health and wellness. And naturally, biohacking is a part of it. It's not the only part of it, but it is a part of it. So that's what draws me to it. I'm like a kid in Disneyland when it comes to understanding and learning and implementing. And if I had like, there have been times where I've had like some free time the entire day, and I would just spend them like biohacking. Not like I don't have a social life and I don't go out, but I make sure that for me it's for less things.
I think that's brilliant. And I think the more we can essentially adopt a little bit of that passion, even if it's borrowed from you, CJ, or from us here, I think sometimes it can spark a sense of curiosity in somebody listening that perhaps maybe isn't so passionate about health and wellness. They can start to perhaps be drawn to these different ideas and just start to see the momentum adding one of those things into our lives can be. So you mentioned there is a bit like being in Disneyland, when you're leaning into these biohacks. You're literally part of the team that is bringing the biohacking Disneyland to the UAE later this month. That's right.
It's called the World Biohack Summit. It is the first biohacking summit or biohacking wonderland in Asia and the Middle East. So we're super excited. Me and a bunch of others we're really excited to bring biohacking officially in this part of the world. And one of the things that you mentioned was about interacting with these knowledge or adding one of these biohacks. One thing is, once you start biohacking and you see the amount of energy it brings you, the amount of resilience it brings you, the amount of focus, there are different biohacks for focus, mental health, physical health, spiritual health. Once you see the ROI that investing some time in them, not a lot of energy, but a little bit of time in them, well, and the return that you see is at least 10x. And then just as a normal curious soul or someone who just wants to be better, it's a no-brainer. You're not, like, for example, you do a few things and you see your sleep score increasing if you're using some of the sleep metrics, or you see yourself performing better at work, or you see yourself lifting more, or you can take any metric. You see less wrinkles on your skin, or you're able to like be more positive in an environment. And then if that comes from one or two biohacks, then you want to keep doing that all the time. So with time, when people constantly try new things, especially the biohacking side of things, then what happens is I wouldn't choose the word addicted, but like they get hooked onto it, because anything that actually brings you more energy, brings you more these pleasant states, it's everyone wants it. Unless you want to be miserable, then that's a different thing.
Exactly. And you're right, you just get hooked on it. I can't remember the first kind of biohacking form of technology that we implemented into our life, because we've done some of the natural biohacks for a very long time now, and they're just kind of integrated as part of us, which I'm very grateful that we've found that kind of on our journey. But I think it must have been maybe blue light glasses. think that was the first thing that got us hooked, and things like wearable technology that have allowed us to then see that data and see how things have changed and improved for us. And sleep was obviously a big one with the blue blocking glasses. And we then saw, like, with the data with like Aura Ring, where we're like tracking that sleep, just to see like what are those little wins that happen in, and sleep become deeper, REM sleep become more efficient. I was waking up feeling more refreshed simply by putting on a pair of glasses, doing something that I would have normally done anyway. So there was no added time for me to actually improve the quality of that lifestyle factor of sleep. And I think that's something really important. So a lot of people that are listening to this podcast, CJ, are people who are high performers. They're people who are busy. They have got a lot of commitments. And sometimes the thought of adding something else can actually feel quite heavy. As like, oh, now I've got to find time to do this thing. And that's one of the things I love about biohacking, is that it's just so efficient. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think how I choose to spend my time and energy is, especially around biohacking, is that if this biohack or the tool or the technique is going to give me a 10x return, then I'm not even going to waste my time. So I think most of the biohacking tools, of course, everyone, we have this thing called biochemical individuality, which means that you're different from me, we're different from your neighbors, and your neighbors are different from us. And this is very unique, because then you can tailor make things work for you. And like, if you have gone are the days that we just hear an advice on like Women's Health magazine or Women's Health magazine or somewhere else, and we just have to follow it. But now we're living in an era that you can have quantified data coming, like you're using the Oura Ring, right? So you can see metrics which are very specific for you. So this also gives a lot of autonomy. This gives a lot of confidence, and then so those things keep going. But for me, to answer your question, I would always look for the low-hanging fruit, because I like to follow this thing called the Pareto principle. Have you heard about the Pareto principle?
Yeah, the 80-20 rule, but share it with our listeners in case they haven't. Yeah.
Yeah, so anyone who's listening, it's called the 80 rule. And what it means is, this has been studied. There's this ratio of 80-20%, which means that 80% of something that you're doing or trying to achieve will come from 20% of your effort. So, for example, 80% of the beer is drunk by 20% of the people in the world. You have 80% of the costs that are caused by 20% of the people in the world. 80% of a company's profits will come from 20% of its clients. Even you in your life, try to notice this, that you're going to wear, let's say, 20% of what 80% of the time. So this is a unique thing that even in nature, when farmers farm and they grow crops, 20% of their land will yield 80% of the crop. So there's this rule that is there, and it's not an end all be all. It's something good to look forward to. So for me, I'm always going to invest or look at things or biohacks or technology in 80% of my time and energy, and it'll give me 80% of the result. Because you don't want to, you've got a normal life, you've got things to do, you don't want to go 100%. You've got to be efficient. So for me, 80-20 rule works the best most of the time.
Yeah, I love that so much. And that could be applied to so many things. You've given some great examples there as well. Something as simple for us where that's evident as well is grounding. And I know you've spoken about earthing and grounding. I think I've seen on your social media actually. And we can delve more into that if you'd like to. But just with that 80-20 rule, one of the things that we noticed, so obviously we moved to the UAE in 2013, and we ended up moving to Thailand for a couple of years post-pandemic, and we was living right on the beach. So grounding was so easy in comparison to being in the UAE. And so we was grounding most of the day, right? And it was so easy to just jump in the ocean because it was right there. So easy to get your feet in the sand. It was right there. And now we've come back to the UAE. We're living in Abu Dhabi. We are living on the 9th floor, and the grounding isn't as accessible. It is like, and I'm like crazy one walking around the park barefoot. on Yas Island, when the neighbours probably think I'm crazy. But the thing that we've done to help to essentially almost mitigate that a little bit is to use grounding mats, which is where you obviously like plug it in. And that took what, 20% effort to just order it, plug it in, set it up, and actually now if we're sitting on the sofa to actually be able to just sit with our feet on it, you know, and that's actually providing a lot of good health benefits. Like I can feel that we're recovering better than what we were when we first came back over. Without that, it's affecting our sleep quality as well. So it's something that can, again, just be very little effort for such a high return that can make a world of difference. So I love that you shared the 80-20 rule there, CJ.
Yeah, let's go back and tell your listeners what grounding is first, so they get a bit more better idea about it. So think about this, guys. Every second, there are about 100 lightning strikes to the planet, and this results in about 8 million lightning strikes per year. And what happens is these lightning strikes charge the Earth with something called as negative electrons. And it sounds complicated word, but basically what it is Earth's natural energy. And we were designed to, wear not wear shoes, not wear rubber shoes that doesn't conduct any electricity. Just we were designed to touch rocks, and she mentioned like, swim on the beach, get some, and that was keeping us much more healthier because we were getting negative electricity. So our feet and our hands are designed to absorb these electrons, and what they do is they reduce pain, they reduce inflammation, they improve these things like heart rate variability. They can also help you sleep better. They can help you de-stress. So these are all the advantages, and this is one of those things that 80-20 rule also applies because you don't have to use them all the time. If you're on the beach, for example, it takes 22 minutes for one red blood cell to carry the charge, negative electron, and then move all the way around and come back to the same point. So in about it's about 22 minutes or 21 minutes, depending on your height and size. But let's say around 20 minutes, and you can get like a charge that will last you hours. And kudos to you. I'm actually standing on a grounding mat right now as well. So I'm implementing some of those grounding, but I'm not too far up. So I've just plugged it literally into the ground, the floor, and it goes into a garden downstairs and it gets plugged in. But one of the things that I would also like to add is if you're around a park or if you're around any natural surfaces, please try to go out for at least 10 to 20 minutes and get in contact with that natural element of the planet, because that, like we mentioned, has a lot of health benefits. Not just health, but mood benefits as well. So if you do it after a hard day at work, you'll see that you'll calm down. You get bonus points if you go to the beach and you touch the salt water, because the salt water also has minerals which can conduct more electricity and they can drive the electrical charge more. Plus, if you go in the day, you get more vitamin D, sunlight, near infrared light. So all of these lights that will help you out. And we know from research in this country, we've got sun all the time, but most of us are deficient in vitamin D or don't have adequate levels of vitamin D that are required for peak performance or longevity.
Love that. Great tips there and great insights. And I think that was one of the things I was most surprised by, I think, when I first came over to the UAE, was the fact that vitamin D levels were actually deficient in most people, including me. I remember when I went and got tested because I wasn't feeling great. And the doctor was like, "You're low in vitamin D." And I'm like, "Really?" I'm like, "How is that possible?" And obviously I was. So just to ask you and pick your brains while you're here, CJ. So at Wellness Theory, we specialize in stress relief, and we are launching very soon our own like Biohack stack, which is a combination of education, tools, practical things that people can use within their lives. So what one thing would you say must be inside that stack if somebody's main goal is to relieve stress?
That's an interesting one because there's so many things that we can throw on it. But if there was one thing I would say find some time to be by yourself and not be, because we're constantly getting bombarded, like you said, with so much of information, distractions, and this kind of times up our neural circuits a lot. Um, Sleep is a natural thing, but I don't know if I should include that. But sleep is the bridge from hope to discovery, which means if you sleep a night naturally, you're going to be more hopeful about the future, hopeful about your life, hopeful about everything that you're going to do, and not be on the other side. So sleep is that bridge. When people ask me what best bridge, I tell them it's 2 hours of extra sleep. Like regardless, it's not keto, it's not vegan, it's not paleo, it's 2 hours of extra sleep. There are a lot of chemical, hormonal, neurochemical things that are going on when you're sleeping. So you can optimize your sleep cycles. That is great, but that's pretty basic. People want to know more. So then I would just say spend time with yourself, be in silence, give your mind a break, because you talk about stress, and stress is, we might think that our boss is giving us a hard time and we're stressed. I was in the parking lot and I couldn't find parking, and that's stressful. I have to pay the bills and that's stressful. That's external situation. And the seed of all human experiences, whether it's joyfulness or blissfulness or happiness or sadness, it doesn't come from outside. And you shouldn't be under the illusion that it comes from outside. The seed of all human experiences is from within. So if you're sad, it's not your boss and not other things. It's your inability to regulate a emotion which is inside you. So the more time you can spend inside you, which is by yourself, understanding this great biohack that you are. I mean, you yourself is the biggest biohack on this planet. And we always estimate that. We always want to look at external things to bring more motivation, bring more pleasure, bring comments and all these things. But like if you really tap into this internal biohack and you figure this out, and you can have things on demand, and hopefully you go for the right thing. So you go for more peace and joyfulness. And I mean, we're always peaceful. It's just at this point, we're letting external situations determine our internal life. So I would say that spend more time with yourself, whether it's meditation, whether do something, but spend time with yourself.
This is music to my ears because we talk about this all the time, and I just love it when somebody else with such experience and credibility, and all the experts that you interview through your podcast and through other means, adds that same layer into the conversation. It just packs even more of a punch, I think, for anybody listening, and it's something we talk about all the time. With regards to our perception of a situation, that is coming from the inside. It is something that we are very quick to put that blame on the outside. And I understand completely why we do it. There's a lot of different reasons, coping mechanisms, just unconscious learnings that we all have as to why we do it. But at some point we have to wake up that it is an illusion, that actually we can't control these things, or we can't influence these things at least. So the other thing that I absolutely love what you said there is about spending time with yourself. I wasn't expecting you to say that. I did wonder if sleep might pop up for sure, because that's like the foundation, 100%. But I love that you mentioned spending some time with yourself, because we can be very overstimulated in the world, right? And it's, again, very natural, and it's actually okay, and it's something that is only gonna probably get perhaps a little bit more intense over time with the way technology is going, the way our societal behavior is going. But we have the ability to be able to come back to ourselves and, like you said, regulate, which is, fantastic that you've shone a light on that.
One of the things I like to tell people is, like, think about, in the 1960s, or 60s or 80s, I remember, I wasn't born there, but I remember all the videos and pictures of these old cars. And most of these cars, when you had to start them, you have to put it in the ignition, and then you have to ask someone to push, because they wouldn't start by themselves. So they did not have those self-start things. And back to now, you can get into your car, you don't need anyone to push it. And you can press a button and you can start it by yourself. That's called the self-start. You can even my car, I can even do it. But the question now is, when it comes to stress, when it comes to all of these things, what kind of a car do you want to be? Do you want to be a car that is, needs a lot of pushing and external things to actually start, or do you want to start it by yourself at any point? So I think that's one of the things important to know. And also, of course, there are so many things that can go into this, and that's why people should be listening to like personality yourself and the podcast, so you guys can guide them through some of these things which are invisible, like subconscious programming and some of these other things that it wouldn't even be on people's radar. But what I want to tell people is there's an equation that I normally always tell people is that E plus O, so the event, oh, sorry, E plus R. So event plus your response will equal to the outcome. So the event is not the outcome. So you being stressed is not going to be the outcome. You being something happening to you is not the outcome. It's the event, but it's how you respond to it that will make the outcome. Like, Viktor Frankl said that between stimulus and response,
Yeah.
there is a gap. And that gap is your ability to respond, or we can call it response ability.
Exactly.
So work on that with stressful situations or anything that comes in life. Take, step back. What I also like to, sorry, I think so many things that you asked me only for one thing, but it's all around those stress management thing, and I think your audience will like it. So what I like to do is when there is a really stressful situation, I take a step back physically, take a step back because that orients your mind. I take one deep breath in, and I call this exercise the connect exercise. It's similar to how you connect to internet. So you look at the Wi-Fi router, you press connect, and it connects, right? But in this exercise, what you're going to be connecting to is your higher self. Step back, take a deep breath in. So you go like, so you come into the moment, and then you ask yourself this question. Because at any point of time, whether you believe in this or not, there is a higher dimension of you or higher dimension of what you would be in the next 20 years or 30 years who's much more wiser and who knows about a lot of this situation. And you try to literally connect with that. You can give it a name. I give my higher dimension a name, and I ask that and ask for guidance. And I ask, what's the best response for me in this time? And how would you like me to respond? Or how would I respond if someone doesn't want to connect to someone? Then think about it this way. Think of your ideal self in the next 10, 20, 30 years. If you're younger, maybe 40 years. And imagine the qualities of this person and picture them all the time. How did they deal with situations? Are they resilient enough, or are they, fragile? They cannot, deal with situations. When it comes to stress, think of how will your best self handle it. And it also, think of yourself as stress or anything else it could be like different levels, right? It could be a level 1, level 2, level 3. Let's say we have 10 levels. At any point, if you're able to internally make yourself bigger than that stress, then the stress is nothing. So if you personally are on a level 1, stress is at level 3, you're going to freak out. Or if it's on level 7, you're going to freak out. But if you keep yourself to level 8, and then all these things they come and you just laugh at them. Like, oh, okay, here we go. And you don't get stressed out. So all of these things will happen if you're able to kind of get this internal biohack right. To get the internal hack right, you need to also look at some external things. And that you build your resilience, you build your energy levels, you take some supplements to sleep well, and then you're able to completely manage it. So there's no isolation. There's no isolation. We love to have the reductionist approach, and we always say, okay, this is happening because of this variable. But in life and in nature, there is no one variable. There are multiple variables. So you always have to consider this. Always consider that, okay, I can't just blame one thing, or there are multiple variables, and always take that into consideration. Give yourself a level up when you're stressed. Look at it, laugh at it, and then connect to your higher self. See how you would respond to the situation in the next 10 years. Maybe it's a lot of people say, you've got post-traumatic stress after a situation, but scientists have now that when you look at something from the future version, that same post-traumatic stress can be a post-traumatic growth for you. And, people should tap into that post-traumatic growth ideology and not look at a lot of the stress ideology.
Exactly. Well, there's so many gems in there that we can unpack, and our listeners will know that there's plenty of episodes inside our own podcast that touch on those and deep dive into those areas, which is amazing. I'm really curious to know, CJ, what is the name? What have you named your higher self, if you're willing to share?
So, yeah, of course. So my birth name is Chiranjeev, but I literally never used this name because it was difficult. I grew up in the UAE. It was difficult for people to pronounce, and it was difficult for people to remember. So I've always used CJ. And now when I want to connect to my higher self, I always say Chiranjeev, which is the more true, authentic version of me without any subconscious programming, without, influence of others, like the most pure version. I'll be like, okay, this is something that I can turn to. And so I use Chiranjeev.
Beautiful. I love that so much. So I do something similar, and it's my 80-year-old self. So and for me, that is essentially higher self, someone that's walked the path, knows better in different dimensions, like all kind of coming as one. That is that 80-year-old, but I haven't renamed her or anything. So I'm gonna think on that. But what I love there in what you said is that you're channeling your own inner wisdom to help you regulate. And I think that is one of the most powerful hacks we can ever learn to do, because nothing can take that away from you. It's somewhere that you always have. And I think sometimes when life does get busier, we do get overstimulated and we are perhaps struggling to regulate. Just knowing that you can always come back to yourself can actually be one of the most soothing things that then has a positive effect on our nervous system, on our quality of our thinking, on the emotions that are showing up. And it allows us obviously to move into our day-to-day life in a more resourceful way, in perhaps the way our ideal self would behave. And remembering that we have a responsibility, we can respond and use that ability rather than react, right, and do something that perhaps we've done in the past and act again in that same way. So many gems in there, CJ. Thank you for that. I'm going to ask you one more question on your the comment that you made about like sleep earlier being so foundational, because there's a lot of information out there, right, about how to optimize your sleep. I think it's getting more of a common knowledge to know that we must sleep in a dark room, sleep in a cool room, ensure that we don't have devices before bed and ideally on wake up, and to have consistent sleep times. But yet there's still a bit of a disconnect, I think, from the everyday person really implementing perhaps some of those boundaries or parameters that are really needed. So what would your advice be to anybody that's listening that perhaps is struggling there?
That's true. So most of the people, I think, that I've spoken to struggle around two things primarily. They're working too late, or they're using their phones, which either for entertainment purposes or for working purposes, and that doesn't allow them to switch off. So what I like to tell people is give yourself that break. I have this thing called sunset. So what that means is after the sun goes down, I don't 80% of the time, or with the biohacking conference, we're a little bit busy because we're talking to speakers from all over the world. But generally, as a rule of thumb, I would make sure that once sun sets, I don't use my phone. And that's like a hard rule because I know the effect of being connected and know what kind of things it does in your brain and your neural circuits. And it's designed to keep you up and awake and worried. But if you can just loosen that and you can be in the moment, I'm not saying go sit in a cave, do other things. Don't be connected. The more connected you are, the more things are going to pop for your attention. Then you're not going to be able to say no, because then that becomes a willpower problem. And we know that from the science of willpower that as the day goes on, our willpower keeps diminishing and our decision making keeps sitting. So the most easiest thing to do would be to go onto social media, look at something which gives that dopamine spike in your brain, and it's addictive. It's like having a cake without any calories. So most of the people are like, oh wow, I would love to have a cake without any calories. And if it doesn't affect, but nothing comes for free, it does affect you. And if people can just do that and keep maybe an hour or two quickly, develop some routines. Most of the time, what happens is people don't have any routines to go back for, and then again, the willpower and the decision making fatigue comes. But if you're living with, you've got a wife or a husband or kids, and you can bring a routine with all of them, so you can be more available in, like, you get the benefits of having more family time. You can maybe read at this time, but nothing crazy, just really lighthearted. You can develop some bedtime rituals with mobility, stretching, or, listening to sounds like binaural beats or something else. But I think it's routine. Most of the people, they're just confused, and then the easiest thing to do is to do the things right. But if they not bring in some sort of a routine into their life, then things will be better. Also, blue light. You mentioned blue light blocking in the beginning. I think one of the most essential things that people should do is blue light. And I mean, I want to be honest that I run a company which is an aging company, and we do blue light blocking classes. So I'm not just trying to blow my own horn, but this is one reason why I'm wearing them now as well, because blue light by itself is so harmful for your body in all ways. And one of the things that it's going to do is to not let you sleep. And then when you don't sleep, then you want to find some entertainment. So, this is a vicious cycle that goes on. So having some sort of a routine kept for yourself, I think most people would benefit greatly from it.
I agree completely, wholeheartedly. I think routine is something that I actually used to really not like the idea of at all. Let's say my husband Jonathan, obviously, who our listeners know, is a co-host and co-founder of Wellness Theory, is very almost like military minded. He's like, exactly where he is at what time and what he's doing, because he's just on it, like in terms of routine. And for me, before I met him, was the complete opposite. I would hate routine. I'm all about, like, let's just go with the flow and see what happens. But I've become so much healthier as a result of having a routine. And it's really not necessarily even just the routine element, it's the commitment that I've now learned to make for myself. And then when I stick to that commitment, that it adds another layer of confidence to me as a person, but also to my health goals and what I'm looking to achieve. And I think there'll be people that are listening to this that have perhaps tried routines and they haven't worked. So I think sometimes as well, like, we have to recognize that we all have a routine. It's just some people it's more disciplined than others. We all have a routine. It's about the commitments we're making to ourselves within that routine, right? Like you said, like putting the glasses on or spending that quality time with your loved ones. I think that having that as like the ritual, like you described, I think is a beautiful thing, because that can make it more enjoyable, right? We still get that dopamine fix. We still get the cake without the calories, but now actually we're creating true connection, which is just wonderful. So with blue light glasses, obviously you're wearing some now. When I first used them, I don't know whether it was a placebo or what, but the first time I put the red ones on, I fell asleep within about 5 minutes. And that happened.
They're powerful.
Still does. They are powerful, right?
Yeah. What happens is, for anyone who's listening and you guys might be a bit confused, so let me try to explain this whole blue light concept so you guys understand it better. The light that we're seeing right now on the computer screens or your phones, 20% of that light moves past your visual cortex and goes to a part of the brain called the SCN, or for the geeky ones out there, it's called suprachiasmatic nucleus. And this is a cluster of 20 neurons. And what they do basically is that they control every function in your body. You guys have heard about body clocks before, right? There's not just one body clock. Every cell, every organ has its own body clock or its own clock. And all of those clocks are related to one master clock, which is this SCN. So naturally, we're supposed to see variations of light natural light from the sun. And as the sun moves around the planet and around the horizon, the lights change. And those are signaling ways for our body to act in a certain way. So there's a time of the day that your gallbladder functions better. There's a time of your day where the liver will dump toxins. And this is all mediated by one of the biggest factors is light. So when you look at a computer screen, it's actually fooling your brain that it's a certain time of the day outside. And because the light and the brightness keeps on being constant, then your body is never able to relax in the evening. So the time that your liver is supposed to stop working or your pancreas are supposed to stop working, they get a signal, hey, there's light outside. That means we should be working because our cells are, you know, I like to say that our brain is really, our cells are very stupid, like our human body cells are very stupid, but they respond really fast. And our brain is very smart, but it responds very slow. So that's how it works. So our cells, 70 trillion cells in the body are like lights down. We've got to like you've got to be active all the time. And this is why a lot of people who are even healthier will later in their life things like diabetes and other things because they never give their body the right signal because they were always in front of the screen working. Not that they have bad intentions, but that's how biology operates. It doesn't matter what you're thinking; it's the signals that you're giving into your body. So, so right now I'm wearing a type of that blocks 75% of all that blue light. This is we looked at circadian and chronobiology in my company for about 3.5 years. And we looked at light intensity, spectrum, peak of the action curve, and all of these things to design these glasses. But what she was mentioning was this other kind of glasses. We have those as well. Those are super dark red. And what happens is they give you a feeling that like basically shuts off all signaling pathways in your brain that there's any kind of light outside. You're still able to see, you can live your life, but you see a little bit red, but it's a hack to your brain, to the suprachiasmatic nucleus that, and it's time to sleep. Let's, and then I normally say when people wear our glasses, they become the most boring people in the world because within 25 minutes, their brain starts shutting off. And if you're more sensitive, even faster. So that's a really good biohack, let's say, because let's face it, we're not going to be living in caves and we cannot, always sleep in the right time. Sometimes your kid wants you to go to the mall or you want to do some groceries. But what if you could mitigate 99% of that damage just wearing something which is, it's not even it's just glasses. So this is a really cool biohack and it helps you sleep better. It helps you go through all these sleep cycles and we established this before that the sleep is one of the most important, it's the fundamental thing or the basis at which all other health pillars are established. So, if you can hack your sleep, this is one of the best things. And blue light blocking can help you do that.
Absolutely. I love that so much. And CJ, you're wearing them. So it's about 4:30 here now, for our listeners, and
Yep.
you're wearing them now. So typically I would put my yellow ones, my 75% ones on probably around maybe 5, 6 o'clock time. And then I would move and put my red ones on kind of after sunset. So
Yep.
should I be wearing them earlier?
You could, if you're looking at the screen, then yes, so that I'm in have natural light. So if I don't look at the screen, I'm going to remove them. But, and I also have some special sleep, some screen blockers which block blue light and they remove. It's for anyone who's listening, there are two softwares that you can install on your screen. And what they do, they put the geographical time in whichever location you are, and then they adjust the screen brightness and the blue light according to that. One free software is Flux, Flux. This is available in Windows and on Mac. And the second one is called Iris. This is a paid software, but it even has a biohacker mode that makes everything red. So I'm using that, but at the same time, I'm very cognizant of not just so a lot of government institutions, Japan, they have like a whole they're fighting lawsuits and a lot of companies. So basically, what I'm trying to get at is this light that we're getting from the screen. It's not only damaging our brain, but it's also phototoxic. So anytime you look at light which is higher in blue light, which is not natural, you're actually causing damage to your retina. So it might be a good idea, especially if you're working from screens a lot of the time, that you use this blue light blocking glasses in the daytime as well.
Amazing. Fantastic insights, fantastic tips, CJ. Having looked at the clock to see what time you were wearing your lights, your glasses, I've realised that how quickly this conversation has gone. So, CJ, I want to say a big thank you for joining us. But before you go, can you please tell our listeners more about the Biohack Summit that is happening at the end of this month? Where can they get tickets? What dates is it? What can they expect from being there?
Okay. So the World Biohack Summit, as I mentioned, is the first ever time a Biohacking Summit is being done. We're doing it on May 30th and 31st. It's in the Grand Hyatt, Dubai. We have a 25,000 square feet space, out of which team is dedicated for that Disneyland experience. So it's not, you're going to be listening to the top experts in health and wellness from all over the world. These are not just health experts, but they're biohacking experts as well. We recently partnered up with the government, and now we're officially, this is going to be a co-hosted event with UAE Genetics and Disease Association and a lot of other government entities. So you can also expect a lot of, for networking, a lot of, like, if you're in the health and wellness industry, then a lot of high level networking happening at the pod. We have this, got fire chambers and red light therapy, and we have like hyperbaric oxygen therapy. So things that you might not be familiar with, but it's going to be a really time to come and see what elite athletes, top performing CEOs, what's the cream of anti-aging like. So we build that experience. You're gonna come and get real life tips from all of the speakers. They're not gonna be boring, I promise. I personally looked out at each and every one of them, and they've got really interesting content. You can come. There's going to be a lunch area as well. There's an iPad, so there's coming. Bring a towel, or we'll get you one. But you can buy the tickets on worldbiohack.com and follow us on social media. And we're also, one of the other cool things that's never been done before is this is the first ever event that is going to be taking place in the metaverse in health and wellness. So it's going to be here live, and we're expecting about a minimum of 10,000. And right now, right before this call, I had the call with my team, and the numbers have jumped up to 50,000. So we created a metaverse platform with the goal of the best meta, or one of the largest metaverse with health and wellness. And 50,000 people will be actually there from all over the world, hanging out, looking at the summit from, yeah. So this is going to be another cool experience for anyone who visits to the metaverse. You can join us there. The tickets that you buy will also be served as NFTs. So they're not one of the tickets that you crash. We'll be offering extreme value, especially if you're in the health and wellness industry. So we're trying to create this very unique experience for everyone, and yeah, we'll see you there.
We are so excited to be there. Jonathan and I will be there. So anyone that's listening, come along with us and join CJ. And there's a great lineup. I mean, we were on the fence as soon as we started to hear like the metaverse that you're created with the event as well. I was like, I kind of want to have that experience. And I'm like, no, Shah, we need to go there in real life. Like, so I'm curious about that. But for any of our listeners, we do have listeners that are not here in Dubai, then look at getting those tickets as well. So you can really come and immerse yourself in knowledge, in connection, and really start to optimize your own health and well-being. I would highly recommend it. Like I said, Jonathan and I will be there. Our community will be there, so it'll be great to come and enjoy the summit with everybody listening. And obviously, you can come and meet CJ in real life as well. And CJ, for our listeners as well, where can they come and find you and listen to your podcast as well?
Yeah, so if you go to Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, you'll be able to Spotify. You'll be able to look for Shift with CJ, SHIFT with CJ, and that's podcast. You can check out our website as well. I also run an anti-aging company. It's called Biohacking, Biohack. And you can grab one of these blue light blocking glasses and some other things from that website. So www.biohacking.com. My Instagram censored me because we were doing a live podcast with a geneticist from Harvard, and we spoke about some things that we shouldn't have. So unfortunately, I lost right now. I've started again. My current Instagram is fitness with .cj. Fitness with .cj. And yeah, I'm going to be there. We're also exhibiting there. I'm going to be speaking about aging and how to reverse aging. So come watch that. We will have very cool panels as well set up for you guys. We'll have some of our products there. So yeah, come check us out.
Amazing. CJ, thank you so much for your time. For our listeners as well, go and definitely check out some of the products that CJ has. The other day, I tried the baseball cap with the red light in it. And that's totally on my list. I'm going to get that for sure. So CJ, thank you so much for your time today. All of those links, everyone as well, will be in the show notes. We'll make sure that all there for you. And we look forward to seeing you at the Biohack Summit. Thanks for joining us, CJ.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure. See you, everyone.